The gate to the pit was already opening, and my father would not look at me. I am Vathira Solkan, third daughter of the Ashfall throne, and I was standing at the edge of the execution rail, watching a chained human named Marcus Hale wait for a creature that had never once left that arena without killing something. "Father, please. Not the human warrior," I said again, but my voice was lost under the roar of 500 nobles who had come only to watch someone die. My father, Warlord Vos Ka-Rethan, kept his 4 eyes fixed on the pit. He humiliated my honor guard in front of the court, daughter. He will pay for it in the old way. He tripped over a guard's own boots. That is not a crime worth a life. You have always had a soft heart, my father said, and it was not a compliment. It is why you have never sat in a war council. I gripped the rail and looked down at Marcus. He stood in chains built for a body twice his size, and yet he did not look afraid. He looked calm, the way a man looks when he has already decided how the next few minutes will go. The far gate ground upward, and out came the creature my ancestors bred for exactly this moment, an animal, built entirely of speed and hunger, with a hide-like armor, and a name that made even seasoned warriors step back from the rail. I shouted down in trade tongue before I could stop myself. "Do not die for my father's pride." Marcus looked up at me for exactly 1 second. "Wasn't planning to, ma'am," he called back, and then the creature was already moving. What happened next was fast enough that half the court missed the important part and only saw the ending. Marcus did not run, because there was nowhere in that pit to run to. Instead, he dropped low the moment the first strike came, letting it pass just above him, and in that same motion he swept the loose length of his own chain around the beast's foreleg before it could plant itself for a second strike. It was not a fair fight. It was never supposed to be a fair fight. But Marcus fought like a man who had faced far worse than a caged animal, using its own weight and speed against it, turning every strike meant for him into an opening he could use instead. He was breathing hard, his shoulder was clearly hurt, and still he did not stop moving. By the time it was over, the arena had gone completely silent. 500 nobles who came to watch an execution, instead, watched a prisoner walk away from one, and none of them said a single word. My father was not silent inside his own mind. I could tell that much from his face. He stared down at Marcus with an expression I had never seen him wear before. Not anger, not triumph. Something closer to a man realizing he had misjudged an enemy for a very long time. "Bring him to my chamber," my father said quietly. "Alive, now." I followed close behind the guards, because I did not trust anyone in that palace to remember the word alive once we were out of the crowd's sight. In my father's private chamber, Marcus stood with his wrists still bound, a fresh line of dried blood along one side of his face, waiting without a trace of fear for whatever judgment came next. My father studied him the way he studied enemy territory, before deciding whether to burn it or take it. 11 years ago, my father said, our records called your people disorganized, weak, easy to defeat. Your records are wrong on 2 of those 3, sir, Marcus said. I expected my father to be angry. Instead, he laughed, a short, sharp sound I had heard him use only in war meetings, the sound of one predator recognizing another. I am told, my father continued, that you held a collapsed tunnel for 6 days, so that 11,000 of my people could escape a war that was not started by them. Is this true? Marcus glanced at me for the briefest moment before answering. They were caught in the middle of something they didn't choose, sir. Seemed like the right thing to do. My father looked at me then, and something shifted behind his eyes, something I would spend a long time trying to understand. It was not approval exactly, and it was not warning either. It was closer to a warlord, quietly rewriting everything he thought he knew about the next 100 years. Release him, my father said. The guards hesitated, because they had never heard those words from him before. He did not repeat himself. As the chains fell away, Marcus rubbed his wrists and looked at me one last time, and for the first time since I had known his name from a file I read alone in my chambers, he actually smiled. Thank you for the warning, Princess, he said. I didn't need it, but I appreciated it all the same. I did not smile back, not yet, because I already understood something far larger had just happened in that room. I had not simply saved one prisoner from an unfair death. I had watched my father decide, in the space of a single fight, that humanity was no longer something to keep locked away and forgotten. It was something worth understanding. And on our world, that kind of decision never stays quiet for long. Word of what happened in the pit spread through the palace before the sun had fully set. By evening, the war council my father had never once invited me to join sent a formal request for my presence, and I understood exactly why. I was the only person in the palace who had read Marcus Hale's full record from beginning to end, long before anyone else thought his name worth remembering. I sat at the edge of that council table while older warlords argued over what to do with a prisoner who had just embarrassed the Empire's most feared arena creature without a single weapon in his hands. Some wanted him studied, some wanted him used as an example. My father silenced them all with a single raised hand. "We already have our answer," he said. "We spent 11 years believing this species could be caged and forgotten. Today we learned we were wrong, and I intend to find out exactly how wrong before anyone else discovers it the hard way." I was asked to bring Marcus before the council the next morning, and for the first time I spoke with him properly, without chains between us, and without a crowd waiting for blood. He answered every question with the same calm honesty he had shown in the pit, never boastful, never afraid, simply steady, in a way that made the oldest warlords in the room lean forward instead of away. When one of the generals asked why he had never tried to escape in 11 years of captivity, Marcus answered simply that escape would have meant leaving without answers, and he had always believed answers were worth more than freedom bought in a hurry. That single sentence changed the tone of the entire meeting. My father, who trusted almost no one outside his own bloodline, began asking Marcus questions about strategy, about patience, about what it truly meant to hold a position with no hope of rescue. Marcus answered honestly each time, never once trying to flatter the very people who had kept him locked away for over a decade. By the end of that long day, my father made a decision that shocked the entire court. Instead of returning Marcus to the lower chambers where prisoners were kept, he ordered rooms prepared near the officer's wing, and he assigned 2 of his own trusted guards not to watch Marcus, but to protect him. I asked my father that night why he had changed so completely in the space of one single day. He was quiet for a long moment before answering, staring out at the darkening sky above the palace towers. "Because I finally understood something your soft heart understood 11 years before I did," he said. "A species capable of that kind of loyalty and that kind of patience is not a curiosity to keep in a cage. It is a mirror we have been too proud to look into." I did not answer him, because there was nothing left to add. In the days that followed, Marcus began working alongside the War Council, not as a prisoner, but as an advisor whose experience my father had finally learned to value instead of fear. Rumors of what happened in the pit reached other noble houses across the Empire, and slowly, carefully, the way our people spoke about humans began to shift from mockery to quiet respect. I often found myself walking past the officer's wing in the evenings, and more than once Marcus was there, standing at the balcony, watching the same sky I had grown up under. We spoke of small things at first, simple questions about his home, about mine, about how strange it felt for both of us to stand on the same side of a war neither of us had chosen to start. One evening, as the sun dropped low behind the palace towers, he turned to me and said something I still think about whenever I remember that day in the pit. "You didn't just save my life today," he said quietly. "You gave your father a reason to actually see me. That matters more than you probably realize." I looked at him and finally allowed myself to smile properly, the way I had wanted to, since the moment the chains fell from his wrists. "Then I suppose," I said, "we are both learning something new about each other." Neither of us knew yet how far that single choice would carry us, through councils and campaigns and decisions far larger than either of us expected on that first tense afternoon. But standing there, watching the sky change color over a palace that had almost taken a good man's life for no true reason at all, I understood one simple truth clearly for the very first time. Sometimes the smallest act of mercy changes the shape of everything that follows.